Hello, my name is Micah Gardner. My group was Ansley, Jarvis, Jacob Wiseman, and myself. And this is Success Tips for Beginning Educators. Um, for my two reports, I did instruction and assessment. For my observation, I spent a total of 15 hours at Glen Heisman Elementary School. This is the elementary school that I went to, and it's also one that I taught at for a year before being in the physical education program. My observation was done in the gymnasium. I am a physical education teacher, and I thought this was the best option for me. Both of my reports were completed with the same teacher. The teacher I observed, his name was Mr. Buffington. He is a very passionate teacher. He cares about what he does, very passionate about what he does. He cares a lot about the students and their engagement and their success in his class and their success in the future, uh, whether it's continuing in elementary school or continuing into middle school into high school. My first report was done on instruction. Mr. Buffington had a lot to say about instruction. He talked about instructional planning, national state standards, scope and sequence, curricular framework and guide, use of indicators, Bloom taxonomy, and engagement. Mr. Buffington says that your instructional planning, your lesson plans should be super detailed and thoroughly written. He uses a scope and sequence that align with national and state standards. And since he's a physical education teacher, he uses the Shape America standards. He uses those to write a thorough scope and sequence, and then he uses the curriculum framework and guide to write detailed lesson plans of when and how he's going to teach each unit. I feel like in the knowledge that I've gotten from this class and other classes really made me see in detail what he's doing better. Seeing the instructional planning process he uses. We also talked about the use of indicators. He thinks that using indicators such as knowing when a student is engaged and when they're not engaged is super important. He also talked about Bloom's taxonomy. He explained that using the Bloom taxonomy, he used the three different levels of the models for the use of classification for the levels of complexity and specificity. Helped him out big time. He also talked about engagement, which I'll get in a little bit later, were my tips. My second and last peer teach was done on assessments. Mr. Buffington said a lot about using different assessments at different times, when to use each type of assessment and stuff like that. We talked about formative and summative assessment. He says that, and what we talked about in our class is we talked about formative assessments should be used towards the beginning to the middle, and summative assessments should be used towards the end. Something that he told me was that summative assessments can't really be switched on with formative assessments, but you can use formative assessments towards the end. It is okay to do that, he says. He also uses something that's pretty unique. He uses motivation. He uses formative assessment for motivation. Something like using a peer assessment can boost another peer's the peer that's doing the assessing and the peer that's being assessed. Something else that I think is pretty unique, and I don't think enough educators use this technique, using assessments to measure yourself, measure the effectiveness of your teaching along with your students' growth. Using if a big group of students don't do as well on an assessment, go back and redo it. You know that you might not have been effective, go back and redo it. Or if your students were effective and they did have a good grade on the assessment, then your teaching was effective. My 4 tips. First, keep students engaged. I think it's super important to keep your students engaged no matter what. Having an engaged class means you have a good classroom environment and that everything's going to run smoothly. 2, plan your instruction thoroughly. This is super important. Having a thorough instruction, detailed instruction, what you're going to teach, when you're going to teach it, and how you're going to teach it. 3, use different types of assessments. Don't be afraid to mix it up a little bit. Use different assessments. Bring something new to the class. 4, use the state and national standards to your advantage. They are written out for you. They will show you what you need to teach and when you need to teach it, and sometimes they'll even show you how to teach it. Use it to your advantage.
My name is Ansley Jarvis, and my reports were on learning and motivation. For my observations, I observed 2 teachers. One was a teacher from Cedartown Middle School, and the other was from Rockmart Middle. I spent a minimum of 10 hours observing both teachers. I was able to observe in their classrooms. The first teacher I observed, she was very passionate about what she was teaching. She truly loves her students and cares for them. She came in very organized and prepared for all of her lessons, which helped the class flow a little bit easier, and she was very passionate about what she was teaching, so the students were more engaged within her lesson because of that. The second teacher I observed is also passionate about teaching and loves to decorate her room, so her students felt welcome. She also used many different methods to keep her students engaged. So when I walked into her classroom, she had posters everywhere describing her lessons and what she would go over and tips and things for that. She also used methods to regroup her students each time so they're not with the same group or with their friends, that they get to go around and meet new people and collaborate with them through the classroom. For learning, I saw that within my observation that she really focused on short-term and long-term. They repeatedly practiced what they were going to do lesson-wise. That means they used distributed practice. Then went back each time through their lesson to review what they had done before, so that would go back into their long-term memory. And when she did this, she provided the students with a strong foundation of learning. Long-term wise, she gave them different strategies how to learn using flashcards and things of that nature. She used the 3 learning practices of audiovisual and kinesthetic learning. She put those within her lessons so that each student could use their strengths to learn. I noticed that this gave the students confidence when they learned something, and that they could come back to it and remember it. And operant conditioning, she used that within her lessons too. She had a positive stimulus going back and reinforcing what they have learned, and she gave just positive feedback to her students, and made them confident about what they were learning. For my observation for motivation, the teacher really focused on intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, even though that wasn't part of the lesson. Most of the students were about getting good grades and getting the questions right on their worksheet. They were internally motivated by answering all the questions correctly, even if they didn't know them at the time. I saw that most of them really wanted to get good grades on the worksheet, and so they tried their hardest, even if they were confused. For extrinsic, she gave out rewards. I didn't get to see this within the observation, but she did tell me that she did do a treasure box every once in a while, depending on what the student had did in the classroom. She used different strategies to help with motivation. She regrouped students and kept them engaged within the classroom. This actually works with goal setting and decision making. Within physical education, we're learning how to teach students how to make good decisions. So if they were to make a good decision on something, that would lead them to goal setting and becoming more motivated to get their goals done. My 4 tips are: be passionate about what you're teaching. This helps students become more engaged within the class. If you are very excited about what you're teaching and you're seeing your students every day, they don't want somebody that comes in and just teaches. They want somebody to be passionate and excited about teaching. Number 2 is use different strategies to keep students motivated, such as rewards. I noticed that most were intrinsic motivation, which means they were internally motivated to get good grades and answer questions and get their worksheet done. This can help teachers by looking at students who are internally motivated to get things done and do a good job on it. 3 is come prepared and organized so that students stay engaged. If you come in and you are not organized, then it just messes up the whole lesson and they are not following your direction. And number 4 is use distributed practice for students' long-term memory. This means that teachers can come in and revisit lessons that they have done before.
Hey, my name is Jacob Wiseman. My field experience report consisted of 16 hours at Model Middle School. It took place in the gymnasium and health classroom, and both of my field experience reports were under the same teacher, Mr. Powers. Through these field experiences, I got to observe how Mr. Powers was able to motivate his students to participate in physical activities and assess the students' performance in physical education and health in an effective way that had the students wanting to be engaged. So going to my slide B on motivation, he showed me ways to use positive reinforcement, extensions, punishment, use intrinsic motivators and extrinsic motivators. So in this, he really showed me great ways how positive reinforcement can help in the classroom with students, like giving them constant feedback, like, hey, you're doing good, keep going, keep working at this, and how that can just change a student from wanting to participate to just wanting to kind of lull around and just walk through and not really give it their all. Extensions, he was able to use this in ways where, I during my field experience report, he had already got to know a lot of his students well, so they knew his class rules, and if they saw him move close, it made them start behaving and acting right. So he would use that buffer of just him bringing himself closer to the students acting out, and that was a great form and a great way that I saw how to really motivate your students. And through punishment, which I didn't see any of this while I was in the classroom, but he said that ways that he would go about this was just through extra assignments, or he would, if it was really bad, he would take the students up to the office and let the administration take care of it. But just these, using the way I saw him use intrinsic motivators and extrinsic motivators were awesome ways, because intrinsic motivators really get the genuine interest for the subject matter by the students. So we want to try and get that drive out of them. But if we can, we use extrinsic. But the biggest thing on extrinsic motivators is we want to use them with caution, and only use them for the short term, because if we come too dependent on those, then it kind of diminishes the intrinsic motivators that the student should have already. So we want to do a good job of juggling those, and Mr. Powers did a great job of showing me a good way of juggling these aspects. Going to my next slide, slide C, it's assessments. Using formative assessments, formal assessments, and informal assessments. Formal assessments were the main thing that I saw throughout the classroom of how Mr. Powers was able to assess his students, but he did this through observations, questionings, and peer and self-assessments. And that was really good because he was able to actually get his view and see how the students were doing just through observing, but also through the questions that he was asking. He was actually getting to see their true grasp of the content they were doing, not only in his health class, but teachers must use them correctly for the assessments to be effective. Because we don't want to just use it as just marking down the grade. We want to use it as a guide for our students to help them get better at whatever they're doing, whether that be sports, activities, in the classroom, learning the health and everything that they're doing. We want to help them, not just give them a grade and send them on. Some tips that I took for this for other educators is keep students motivated and engaged in the lesson, make assessments effective, use balanced approach when motivating students, and relate to students' genuine interests. So really, you want to wrap around the students' genuine interests, whether that be music, dances. If you can incorporate those into your classroom, that will really get them hooked and engaged in what you're doing. And those are some big key points that I took from that. Thank you so much.